The bank was busy that Thursday morning. A line of maybe 12 people stretched back from the main counter. Office workers on lunch breaks, an older gentleman with a stack of envelopes, a young mother trying to keep her toddler still beside her stroller. The kind of ordinary Thursday morning crowd that moves slowly and doesn't particularly notice anyone around them. I was near the front of the line. Jeans, a plain gray jacket, hair pulled back. I had come straight from a breakfast meeting and hadn't thought much about what I was wearing. I never really do. When I reached the counter, the manager on duty glanced at me the way certain people glance at certain other people, a quick, practiced assessment that takes about 1 second and reaches a conclusion that has nothing to do with the actual person standing in front of him. His name tag said Craig Dawson, branch manager. He slid my card through the reader. Waited. Then he picked it up, turned it over once, and slid it back across the counter toward me. He smirked. "Ma'am," he said, loud enough that the people nearest to us could hear clearly, "this account doesn't qualify for the service you're requesting. I'm going to need you to step aside." He glanced at the line behind me. "Please don't waste my time." The entire line was watching. The young mother looked at me. The older gentleman shifted uncomfortably. Someone behind me whispered something to the person next to them. I couldn't make out the words, but I understood the tone. I stood there for a moment. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I picked up my card, put it back in my wallet, and turned to leave. I had taken exactly 2 steps toward the door when I heard it, a door opening quickly somewhere behind the main counter, and footsteps moving faster than normal across the marble floor. "Ms. Caldwell." The voice was urgent, almost breathless. I turned around. A man in a dark suit was crossing the lobby toward me. His name was Michael Torres, and he was the branch director of this location. He had been trying to schedule this meeting for 6 months. He looked at me. Then he looked at Craig Dawson. And slowly, visibly, the color left his face entirely. He leaned close to the nearest staff member and said something in a voice so low that only that person could hear it. Within seconds, every teller at every window had stopped what they were doing. The entire bank went quiet. Before I tell you what he said to that manager, please take a second to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments what country you are watching from. Now, let's begin. My name is Jennifer Caldwell. I am 36 years old. And the building I was standing in that Thursday morning was a building I had stood in once before, exactly 10 years earlier, under very different circumstances. I grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina, in a part of the city that doesn't appear in the tourism materials. My mother worked 2 jobs for most of my childhood. My father left when I was 11. We were not poor in a dramatic, visible way. We were poor in the quiet, grinding way that means you always know the balance of every account and you think carefully before you spend $4 because $4 is not nothing. I was good at school. Math came easily. I had a particular way of looking at systems, processes, structures, the way things connected, that my teachers said was unusual. I won a partial scholarship to UNC Charlotte and worked the rest of my way through in 3 years. After graduation, I had an idea. It wasn't a complicated idea. It was a software platform that helped small healthcare practices manage billing and compliance without needing to hire a dedicated administrator. Simple, practical, the kind of tool that solved a real problem that real people had every single day. I had seen it firsthand. My mother had worked for a small clinic for 7 years and watched the office manager spend half her time buried in paperwork that the right software could have handled in minutes. I spent 8 months building the first version myself. Then I needed capital to grow it. I put together a business plan. I had projections, a working prototype, 2 signed letters of intent from clinics willing to pilot the platform. I dressed carefully the morning of the meeting. I drove to the bank on Tryon Street, the one with the marble floors and the tall ceilings, and I sat across from a loan officer named Dennis Hartley, and I walked him through everything I had built. He listened politely. He reviewed the documents. And then he told me, in the measured, professional language of someone delivering a decision that had been made before I walked in the door, that my application did not meet the bank's current lending criteria for early-stage businesses. I thanked him. I gathered my papers. I walked out across that marble floor, got in my car, and drove home. That night I sat at my kitchen table and thought about what to do next. And then I got back to work. What happened over the following decade is a long story that I will tell only briefly here, because it is not the story I want to focus on. I found a small investor through a college connection, $12,000 that bought me 6 months of runway. I spent those 6 months proving the model worked. Then I found a second investor. Then a third. The platform grew, client by client, slowly, and then faster. I hired my first employee in year 2. By year 5, we had 43 employees and over 300 healthcare clients across 11 states. In January of this year, my company was acquired by a national healthcare technology group for a number that I still have to remind myself is real when I see it written down. I did not move to a bigger house. I did not buy a new car. I kept the same apartment I had lived in for 4 years, with the same kitchen table where I had sat the night Dennis Hartley told me no. Some habits don't leave you even when the circumstances change. 6 months before that Thursday morning, I received a call from Michael Torres. He introduced himself as the branch director at First National Bank's Tryon Street location, the same building, the same marble floors. He had gotten my contact information through a professional referral. He was calling to say that First National had a private wealth division that specialized in serving business founders post-acquisition, and that he would very much like to meet with me to discuss what they could offer. I recognized the address when he gave it. I said I would think about it. He called again 3 months later, then again a month after that. He was persistent in a way that felt genuine rather than aggressive, patient, prepared, specific about what he believed his team could offer. I did some research. The private wealth division had a good reputation. The terms they were proposing were competitive. I decided to give him the meeting. I scheduled it for a Thursday morning in March. 10 o'clock. I wore jeans and a gray jacket because I had a breakfast meeting beforehand and I hadn't gone home to change. It didn't occur to me to think much about it. I arrived 7 minutes early. Michael Torres did not know I was in the building yet. His assistant had not yet told him I had arrived. He was in his office finishing a call, expecting me to be shown back in a few minutes. Instead, I had joined the line at the main counter to ask a simple question about a transfer, something that would take 30 seconds and that I thought I could handle quickly before heading to the back office. That was when I reached Craig Dawson. What Craig Dawson knew when he looked at me was this: a woman in jeans and a gray jacket with a card he didn't immediately recognize from a bank account he didn't have context for. What Craig Dawson did not know was that Michael Torres had spent 6 months preparing for my visit, that the conference room in the back had been set up with printed materials and a specific presentation his team had built over 3 weeks, that my company's post-acquisition accounts represented the largest potential private wealth relationship this branch had been offered in 4 years, that Michael Torres had personally briefed his senior staff about my visit that morning and had asked them to be ready to make the best possible impression. He had not briefed the manager on the main floor. That was the gap. And Craig Dawson stepped directly into it. When he slid my card back across that counter with his smirk and his voice loud enough for 12 people to hear, "This account doesn't qualify. Please don't waste my time." He had no idea that in an office 40 feet away, a man was about to have the worst professional moment of his career. Michael Torres heard the name. His assistant had come to the office door to quietly let him know that Ms. Caldwell had arrived and appeared to be at the front counter. He stepped out to greet me and stopped when he heard the exchange, the tail end of it, enough to understand exactly what had just happened. He crossed that lobby faster than I imagine he had ever crossed it in his professional life. "Miss Caldwell," he said, reaching me just as I turned toward the door. "Please, I am so sorry. Please come with me." His face, when he turned to look at Craig Dawson, was something I will not forget. Not anger exactly. Something past anger, a kind of stunned, dismantling recognition that things had gone very wrong. He turned to the nearest staff member and said, quietly but clearly enough that the silence of the lobby carried it to every corner of the room, "Get a manager from private banking down here right now. And please make sure Ms. Caldwell has everything she needs." Then he turned to face Craig Dawson directly. The room was absolutely still. Every teller, every customer, the young mother with her stroller, the older gentleman with his envelopes, everyone was watching. Michael Torres spoke in a measured voice. Quiet. Deliberate. "The woman you just asked to leave," he said, has been our highest priority client meeting for 6 months. She built a company from nothing in this city, and we have been asking her for that opportunity for half a year." He paused. "And in 30 seconds, you made sure she'll remember this branch for the rest of her life." Craig Dawson opened his mouth. Michael Torres looked at him. Craig Dawson closed his mouth. Michael turned back to me. His voice shifted immediately, professional, warm, genuinely mortified. "Miss Caldwell, I would be grateful if you would still allow us the meeting. Whatever your decision is after that, I understand completely. But please let me at least show you who we actually are." The lobby stayed silent for another long moment. I looked at Michael Torres. I looked at Craig Dawson, who was now studying the surface of the counter in front of him with great concentration. I thought about the morning 10 years ago when I had walked out of this same building and driven home and sat at my kitchen table and decided to get back to work. "All right," I said. "Let's have the meeting." I met with Michael Torres and his private wealth team for 2 hours that morning. They were thorough, prepared, and professional in every way the previous 30 seconds had not been. I moved a portion of my accounts to that branch 3 weeks later. Not all of them, but enough. I heard through a contact at the bank several months after that morning that Craig Dawson had been quietly reassigned to a back-office role with no customer-facing responsibilities. Michael Torres never confirmed or denied it when I asked him indirectly. He simply said that the branch took client experience very seriously and had made some internal adjustments. I accepted that answer. There is something that stays with you when you grow up without much, a permanent awareness of how quickly people form opinions about who you are based on what you look like, what you're wearing, what neighborhood your accent carries. I have been underestimated in boardrooms by people in expensive suits who looked at me and made the same calculation Craig Dawson made. I have learned to recognize the expression, that small, certain smirk that says the conclusion has already been reached. It used to bother me more than it does now. What I know after everything is this: the people who judge quickly are usually working from the thinnest possible version of the information available. They see the jacket and the jeans and they stop there. They don't see the 10 years, the kitchen table, the $12,000 that became something real. I left that bank with everything I came for. Craig Dawson left that counter with a lesson that no training course had taught him. And I drove home past the street where I grew up, the same way I always do when I'm leaving that part of Charlotte, and I thought about my mother and the 2 jobs, and the $4 that was never nothing. And I smiled. Some things take 10 years to come back around. But they do come back around.